Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring antique recipes out of the past and back into the kitchen. Yesterday was the 75th anniversary of VJ Day, and the recipe we're sharing with you today is for a World War II era trifle. To make it, we've used 3 different recipes from the same book, the 7th edition of the Manual of Modern Cookery. So to make this trifle, you're going to need the following ingredients. For the base, you'll need 1 plain sponge cake. We've pre-baked a Madeira cake using a recipe from this book, but you can use any similar homemade or shop-bought cake. And to spread onto it, you'll need about 10 tablespoonfuls of jam. Then to make the custard, you'll need either a little wine or some flavouring such as vanilla. Out of the 2, we ended up using the flavouring. You'll also need half a pint of milk, 28 grams of sugar, and 14 grams of custard powder. Then for the whipped cream, you will need 28 grams of sugar, 1 teaspoonful of flavouring, and we're using vanilla, and half a pint of whipping cream. Finally, to decorate, you're going to need glacé cherries, candied angelica, which is very hard to come by these days, and some pistachios. The first thing we're going to do is to assemble the base, so to start with, cut your cake into evenly sized slices. We used a recipe for a simple Madeira cake from the same cookbook to make this cake, which in 1943, and for families rationed at the tightest level, would have used up 1/3 of your weekly sugar ration, 2/3 of your weekly margarine ration, and double your weekly allowance of fresh eggs. You can just as well use a shop-bought cake, but if you really want to get into the 1940s spirit, we've provided full instructions for how to make this Madeira cake on our website, linked in the description box. Once you've cut your cake into slices, spread them on one side with your jam. Last week we made this lovely gooseberry jam using a recipe from our copy of Cookery Illustrated and Household Management, which was published in 1936, and using gooseberries we'd grown in our garden, and the flavour of this jam works so perfectly in this trifle. Then lay these into your trifle dish. Put some slices on the bottom and others around the sides with the jam facing inwards. And that's your base done. So now we'll move on to the custard layer, for which we've used this next recipe in the book for a plain custard sauce. Put a saucepan over a low heat and pop your custard powder into the pan, and then pour over this your milk. Then stir these together slowly for about 5 minutes until the custard starts to boil and you see it thickening up. Next, mix in your sugar. And then pour in either the flavouring or the wine. We've opted for flavouring, so we've added in some vanilla bean paste, and then just continue to stir the custard over a low heat for 1 to 2 more minutes as it boils before removing from the heat and allowing it to cool down to room temperature. Once it's cooled down, pour the custard over your cake base. And then leave this until your custard is completely cold before moving on to make your whipped cream. So then once your custard is cold, whip up your cream. and then mix in 28 grams of sugar. And by now we've used up 5 ounces of your 8-ounce weekly sugar ration for the whole recipe for a family on the tightest band of rationing during the Second World War. And then add in a drop of flavouring, and we're using some vanilla bean paste again. So mix this together completely and then spoon it into a piping bag. And if you put your piping bag into a tall jar like this, it's a lot easier to fill up. So the recipe doesn't actually say what sort of nozzle to use or specify a piping pattern, so it's really up to you. We used a star nozzle and we just piped around the middle like this in a sort of wavy line, and then filled the middle in, piping straight upwards. And just keep going until you've used up all of your whipped cream. Once you've piped on all of your whipped cream, it's time to decorate. So on go the glacé cherries to start with. And then on goes the candied angelica, which you don't see around much at all these days. It really shows the age of the recipe. We had to buy ours online, and the last time we personally think we saw angelica in the shops must have been in the 90s. And last but not least, sprinkle on top some pistachios. And that's it, this 1943 trifle is finished and begging for consumption. And now to take the first scoop. Now we're not used to having trifle without jelly in it, but we must admit that this one really is beautiful. It tastes amazing. Another recipe that got top marks from our families. Madeira Cake was also a perfect base for it, and our 1930s gooseberry jam complements the flavours so well. If you're going to make this trifle, we must recommend that you make that first. You will see what we mean. We're not sure if the custard would have been better or worse if we added wine rather than vanilla bean paste. We weren't too sure about the idea of adding wine to custard, but if you try the wine instead, let us know how it went for you. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to leave us a like, and if you're interested in seeing us recreate more antique recipes, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button so you'll be notified each time we have a new video ready. You can also find full instructions for this recipe on our website, linked in the description box below.